Howdy, friends, and welcome to another episode of Success from Day One, a podcast powered by Day One experts, where we spotlight bold ideas, proven strategies, and everyday wins that drive real community growth. This podcast is for the doers in economic development, the ones willing to take action, build trust, and get results that matter. Now, I'm sorry to say, but the first few minutes of our interview got clipped. And here's what you need to know. Lyle Roggow cracked the code on turning industrial real estate into a revenue engine for his community. So if you want your EDC to break free from budget dependence, this is your playbook. So before we jump in, though, let me set the stage for what you're about to hear. This conversation is all about how communities, big or small, can build industrial real estate projects that actually pay off, bringing in new jobs, capital investment, and long-term revenue without relying solely on sales tax or city budgets. My guest is a good friend, someone I've known for years through IAMC, where we've actually both won and been honored with the Economic Developer of the Year award. Lyle has led the Duncan Area Economic Development Foundation since 2006, turning Duncan into one of the state leaders in creative economic development and industrial real estate strategies for Oklahoma. So, if you want a real-world playbook for growing your community's economic future and a few lessons on what not to do, this is the conversation you need to hear. Let's dive in.
2000 timeframe. We also owned a building that was about 30,000 square feet. It was a little bit low, but we had a leather goods manufacturer that actually made billfolds and wallets and things like that for Neiman Marcus and things like that. So Those were the two properties that we had. What you also have to understand is that much like Texas, we've had to copy some things that you guys are doing there too. So in 1994, the community passed a half-cent sales tax for economic development. Our name was on that ballot during each of these steps. So, and then, as the foundation, so we were the official person or entity that would take care of economic development within our community. So, and that half cent did generate some money that allowed us to do some extra things. And so we started building. It took me a little bit of time. I'm going to tell everybody that this is not something that you can just really quickly jump into, get your board on with you to start moving, because you have to prove yourself to your boards. And you can throw ideas out there and it may take you a bit. And all of a sudden, when your board gets that confidence in you and your ability, and your board then supports your efforts, then you really can move forward. So, it was kind of an interesting deal, because the first time I tried to pitch, hey guys, let's buy this building, they kind of backed me up a little bit and said, no, we're not going to do that. Eventually I got it across the finish line. We filled the building, and it was probably 115,000 square foot property we had at that time. It was an old trailer manufacturer. And at that point in time, I got my board convinced that this is the direction that we needed to move. And it was much easier after you get your first property, or on, because they already had the two properties when I got here. Once you got that second property or that third property on the books and you proved them why buildings are important, then you run.
So talk a little bit about that, Lyle, because I think that's a stumbling block people run into right away. Is the typical response from a board is, we're not in the real estate game. So why is it so important that you have and create that product, and why is it, what can they say to their board to sort of help them understand an economic development that need for a product?
Sure. The first thing that you have to understand is that in the world of economic development, we're always doing incentives, and those incentives of those businesses, those businesses can leave. But when you put money into a building, the building is still here for the next business to come along. And once your board understands that this is a smart way to do this. Now, let me go through the entire story so that you'll understand why we did what we did. So our tax was every 5 years for economic development. And every time I would go back to the voters every 5 years to renew that half cent, you start to watch your percentage of voters that are supporting you, and it starts to come down a little bit.
Trends downward?
You start to go, you know what? We really need to think about something that's a little more long-term approach here. And so we went down that path a bit, and every step of the way, I think my board, and look, I've got a great board that rotates. We've got some really fantastic individuals. They can only stay on my board for a certain amount of time. They have to be members of our foundation to be part of that board. I mean, it's very, very well structured. And each one of them have come in with the same understanding that, yes, this does work. And so we, when they started seeing what the sales tax results were of the renewal of these elections, they knew that, you know, this is not going to be a forever, but how do you get sustainability within your community, you know, that you're not having to dip your toe in and utilize sales tax to support your efforts? When you can get to that point, then you really start to make a huge, huge change. So what happened after, in about 2014, the city wanted half the funds for economic development so they could do infrastructure improvements. So you kind of have to think about your AB tax that you guys have a little bit.
Yeah.
So the city was
We're
kind of
starting to
saying,
see
hey,
that, right?
yeah, it's similar.
Yeah, we're starting to see cities push in and try to figure out how they can utilize our resources for more, generalized uh, projects.
Yep. So knowing that was the case, then we had to give up half of our money, and our a half cent at that point in time was generating us about $2 million a year. Our operating budget was running about $500,000 to $600,000 a year to run economic development efforts. And so we're a 3-person team here. There's a lot of other things that we do, and we can talk about those later. But as I continued down the path, I said, you know, we have a business incubator. I need to put those folks that are rolling out of my incubator into buildings. So we started building some smaller buildings. We built some shell buildings. And, you know, what the board started to see is if you have something on the ground that people can see, because people don't have visions. I hate to say that.
Yeah.
You know, if they see a building, they can see themselves in it. They can't see dirt and see themselves in that building. Okay.
Yeah.
It's you got to get past that mindset. So we started building buildings, and today we have 14 properties that we lease out. Our rental income generates us about $2 million a year. We are no longer on the sales tax with the city. We're working out of our own resources with our 14
Wow.
properties and supporting our economic development efforts. And our budget is about 650. So you can, and we're 100%, or as of, well, we're about not to be 100% occupant, but we're getting a building back. And you know what? Here's what I'm going to say to you. To get a building back, it's okay, because I can now go have something to market. And my board's
Right.
also starting to look at what's the next building we're going to build.
Talk about, sometimes you have the worry that you're taking opportunity away from a local developer. So how did you sort of navigate that, and position yourself to be a person who could be a landlord in your community versus, Bob who wants to build a building? Did you face any of those challenges?
None. No one wants to take those kind of risks. Now, you may have one in your community, and hey, power to you if you do. But if no one is going to step up, and I still give anybody, if somebody else wants to go build buildings, have at it. Okay.
Right.
But what I find out in this is that I need to know with very good confidence if I have a building that's available and I have a prospect that is knocking on our door that we're submitting an RFP on. I need to know with certainty that I can make a deal with them and that I can tell them, here's how much I'm going to rent this property to you for. And so the way that we run our AM schedule is we do the buildings off of an AM. I try to compare that to a square footage a little bit as well. And I had, 5% onto it, and we run with it. So some would say, are you a triple net? Not totally. We give a 30-day out. Okay, that seems a little crazy, but I'm in the business of job creation. I'm not in the business of if a business needs to leave, it's fine. You
Right.
don't hold somebody hostage. So I can do things that other developers who are in this for profit off of the development, I don't have to worry about that from the same angle, which is
Right.
money.
You have a different ROI consideration, right? That's the benefit of being in economic development is we look at things just a little bit different.
We do. I mean, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, how do I advance the community? How do I attract jobs? I mean, and trust me, We had a project that they were looking at our community, and once I showed them some brand new buildings that were under construction, they jumped on board and said, "We can see ourselves here. When can this be available?" And this was in May when they were doing their tour, and I said August, and they said, "Can you do this?" And I said, "Absolutely." And we landed that company strictly because buildings were available that met the company's needs.
Right. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, I'm back at the beginning. I want to do this. I finally convinced my board, but I've never built a building before. So how does that work? Do you partner with someone to build that, and what's the expertise? Now you've built 14 of them. You might can do it in your sleep, but how can an economic developer who's never built a building make that happen?
Well, I will also tell you that we had bought some existing properties that sit in our industrial park for 18 months that nobody seemed to want, and we bought them, put a little money into them, and leased them out very, very quickly. So, we take both approaches. Here's where I'm fortunate. I do have two construction companies who are members of my foundation, and I have a developer, I have an architect that will draw everything up for us. We go to those two commercial construction companies, and we say, "All right, here's the package. Need you guys to bid on it. Come in for a pre-bidder conference, and we'll talk it through and see if everybody's seeing everything apples to apples." And then they'll throw different obstacles at me a bit. Can we get by with doing, where can we cut corners as well? And
Right.
everybody hears everything in the front side. And then if there are any addendums that have to be dealt with, then we'll deal with that through our architect and through the construction folks. We tell them
Okay.
exactly when we're going to open up the bids. We do it right in front of them. Okay. They deliver their bids to me. I open them up and I read them. And from there, we take, the best and lowest bid. Okay.
Okay.
And then we run. And it makes my contractors, because we're only in a community of about 24,000 population. I'm very fortunate to have two construction companies that build industrial space.
Right.
Not everybody has that either, but they feel very comfortable. Both of them have won bids. I get the best deal, and they know where they've got to be. So
Well, and you said something sort of interesting, right? You said you bought an existing building and then fixed it up because nobody else would. So I think that's also an interesting, I think in every community there might be, and it doesn't have to be a 50,000 square foot industrial building, right? You might have a 5,000 square foot building that's just sitting there that nobody wants to touch, that you, as the city, can take on some of the risk of owning it and making it pretty and investing in it, and sort of build off that. It doesn't have to be a ground up, brand new, open up an industrial park. It literally could be repurposing a building that's already existing, that just is that someone isn't willing to risk or can't see the vision of, you know, doing that. So I think that's a pretty wise. It's how you could get started, I guess. So you
it,
don't have to
it
start
really
from
it
scratch.
is. You don't have to. I mean, and the space that we're into. I mean, the largest building that we have is 88,000. Um, I've got three that are 6,500, and they're half shop, half office. I've got a 10,000 that's probably 8,000 of it's shop, climate controlled. 2,000 of it's going to be office area. I've got a 20,000 square foot that's got higher build out on it with a nice little crane in it with paint booths and all that we bought, from a family that said, "Hey," and most of these are all in our industrial park.
Right.
And here's the other part I'm going to say is most of these, now all of these buildings that we have built in our industrial park would not have been there had we not been the one pushing to build.
Right.
Even if I told the contractor, "Hey, look, I'll make you a deal. I'll sell you the property. You build one," they still do not want to take the risk.
Right.
So we can afford that risk a little bit differently, and especially when we had the sales tax election that we're getting money off of. But now, we have to assess our risk based on what's in the bank account as well.
But you also have a lot longer history of doing it, right? So you're a little bit better at
Oh,
sort of reading that risk and the tea leaves of what the industry is. You might talk about, I mean, when you started this and you decide, okay, we're going to build our first one or whatever. Did you use data, or did you use projects that you were losing or not being able to apply for as a reason to build sort of your first project, or did you just decide I'm going to do it and see what happens?
No, we had one company that said they wanted, they were in our incubator, said they wanted to be in a more permanent space, bigger space. And I said, I drew it out on a napkin. Here's what I think will work for you. They said, yep, that works. And I said, then I talked to my board and I said, hey, can we do 3 of these? Because we'll get a greater savings. And we did 3 of them in a row. And I actually was fortunate enough that my board chairman said, "Yeah, I get it. Let's do it." And that was about a $2.1 million project back in 2014. They knew we needed to spend some money or spend down some money. They knew that this would help secure us a little bit more, help diversify. That's our bigger deal was how do you diversify your economy, especially when your biggest employer at that time is Halliburton, which
Right,
Halliburton started here in 1919. So we were trying to diversify with smaller books of business, smaller buildings.
right.
And we'd already been through enough downturns of the economy. So you kind of take that on and you roll with it. So we did that, and before I was done, I had all 3 buildings filled. I only had one that said they wanted a building. Before it was all built, I had all 3 done.
That's amazing.
So yeah, build it and they will come.
Well, we keep coming back to how do you convince a board, and I always tell, if a community is not willing to invest in itself, then how good of a salesperson do you have to be to convince someone to invest their money when you're not willing to invest your money? And there's a little bit to when you build that momentum in and invest, then it feels to the company like, okay, this town's willing to they think they're going to go places, so I want to go with them. And there's a little bit of that, I think, of sort of priming the pump, if you will. And it might be that you just have to do the first one, and maybe you show up and prove up the market, and somebody else comes in and starts to build. If that could be the case as well. But
It really can be. What you have to do is you have to have a board that has a vision with you. And so if you think back, I mean, I work off of a pyramid system, and I'll just give you my building blocks. I mean, it's the building blocks of economic development that I utilize, and so it's in the shape of a triangle. But what you've got, and I came into this organization with this because this is what the Oklahoma Department of Commerce was teaching the communities way back in the late 1990s. And I'll just go through them with you. So it starts off with leadership. Okay. You have to have a good leadership program within your community. You have to create and develop leaders
oh,
willing
amen.
to take risk. Okay. So if you do not have a leadership development program in your community, I'd say get started. I mean, and we did not in Duncan. We did have one, but it went kind of dormant. But some people get their leadership through maybe Lions Club or Rotary or those things. But we actually, our Chamber of Commerce, we said, look, we need to have our leadership development program so that we can put people through it, so that they, one, get educated, and two, they will become the future leaders and we can move forward. So that's building block number 1. Number 2 is workforce. You've got to be able to work with your educational partners, whether it be your K through 12 programs, we have our career techs here, your junior colleges, your universities, which we also have here, to create that pipeline. One of the things I did earlier this week is I was in front of our high school internship program, teaching soft skills of building their resume and getting ready for their interviews, because we have a really cool internship program where we have about 50 kids that will get the opportunity to go into businesses and work in that role and find out if that's the occupation they want to be part of. That's building block number 2. Number 3 is your community capacity. How's your community look? What's your industrial park look like? How's your hospital, your schools, all those? I mean, those are baselines to what you need to have to show up. So that's your base, your foundation. Next is your existing business industry, and we all repeat this. That's 65 to 80% of all new jobs come from taking care of what you already have.
I love it.
I mean, you already know this because you got your certification. I don't have that, but I've got a little knowledge. Uh, so then the next building block is your entrepreneurs. What are you doing to help grow your entrepreneurship community? How do you take care of them? Well, we set up a business incubator here to take care of that, to help them with their business plans, to do the things that you need to do. So that's that second tier. The final one is the new recruitment of business industry. The hardest part to do, the thing that takes us the longest. I mean, but here's the deal. If you'll take care of the 5 blocks underneath that, recruitment will come at its own pace. And the reason we build buildings is so that we can recruit and we can show and demonstrate to the businesses that come here, we'll take good care of you. And that's how we did this. So I brought that to the board back in 2006. I've not deviated from those building blocks. And it took us, buying another building, and pretty soon we were filling it, and they saw the value that it made the organization actually money. It also made us really demonstrate that we were very, very good at taking care of the taxpayer dollars that we were entrusted with. So that's how we got rolling.
So, Lyle, talk a little bit about, and everybody's like, okay, I'm getting started. What were there any big mistakes or pitfalls maybe that that you could help other EDCs if you were going back and starting over and saying, okay, I'm going to go back and do this better this time? What are a couple of things that you would watch out for if you're an EDC person starting this journey?
Make sure you're on site quite a bit as those buildings are being built. I mean, because I say that because we had one issue that really did trip us up on a heat and air system where the contractor, there were 3 different contractors that worked on a heat and air system for us, and they may have put some junk inside of the cooling pipes, and that was plugging up our system, and the business was not happy because their heat and air was not working properly. And after we finally flushed out the system, we found out that there was welding rods and all kinds of stuff inside of it. It cost me $150,000 to correct that mistake, and nobody wanted to take ownership of it.
Everybody's pointing fingers.
That was exactly what was going on. I mean, so while we make them have a bond on the deal, I mean, you still, they're going to point fingers, and you can go fight this in the courts. I wouldn't recommend that. Just sometimes you have to allow enough allowances to cover things that may not work, and in your mechanical side of this.
So really building in some
safety guards.
Yeah, some miscellaneous, right, contingency funds as you go, and kind of building that in. One thing I always ask is, and I know you said you had a 3-person team, but what's your thoughts on, because now you got building maintenance issues, right? Like, and I hear that a lot from economic developers. Well, I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to have to fix things. What's your process for working through some of those things?
I really don't have it. Well, of course, if you were to ask my office manager, she's my she takes care of the property management. It was not in her original job description when she took this about 14 years ago, and we only had 2 properties at that point in time, maybe 3. And so, yeah, she's had to make some adjustments here. Let's flip this the other way for a second. I'm a foundation, 501c3 foundation. I have a membership. My membership is made up of bankers, plumbers, heat and air folks. I do business with those businesses, within my membership primarily. Right. Okay. And so I am an economic engine in itself because of the property management side of this, because they get the opportunity to also go and repair and fix and do the maintenance on those, whether it's, the grass maintenance that's out front to make sure that all the lawns are taken care of, or it's the heat and the air, or the contractors that I have that have to get the opportunity to go back and make renovations or repairs for us. I use my members, and that's the motivation here, as part of my system. And so we're spreading money, once again, back through our community in a different way to a different segment that it's helping your existing business industry platform.
Yeah, it's almost a business retention and an expansion sort of activity, right? And you're able to make these touches maybe not for a good reason, but at least you're doing that, and able to talk to those service providers that are helping you now. And I guess as you have grown your portfolio, you probably have greater influence in that, like like they don't want to not serve you as a client because you've got a pretty big need there, right?
Yeah, I feel that we have a good reputation with them. We are the first payers of choice for our contractors that are members. And look, they pay me a membership fee of $600, so $1,200 a year, and some of them, they make more money than that off of what we're doing. So
Right.
our motivation is different than a developer.
Sure.
It's probably I look at it differently. So to take this one step further, I don't know if I had told you this or not, but we've gone through used to not tell our story real well. I've had a assessment done of how we spent the dollars and what we've done. So basically, we're about well, let me start off with how the sales tax dollars worked. We have since 1994 to 2022. I still need to go through and add 2 more years to our assessment, but we had collected about 38 million dollars in sales tax collections, and here's how we spent them. And it goes into 4 buckets. About 13.5 million went to our operating expenses for all those years, for 28 years. Spent about 6 million on incentives where they were job creation incentives. About 16.8 million was toward capital. Okay, that'd be building buildings. Okay, with sales tax dollars. Yet we're worth $30 million, and we generate $2 million in revenue a year for the organization. So what we've been able to do is preserve those dollars, didn't lose them. Okay. They're still here, still intact. And I think that was a win for us. And the Dr. Mark Sneed, who put the report together, said he had never seen that much efficiencies made of any organization of economic development. Usually once you spend those dollars, they're gone. So
Yeah.
we've taken our own dollars and replugged those back into those buildings. You can figure that out after that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Jason was asking how much is the membership?
It's $600 is our membership. Membership is not a huge. We don't try to make it an obstacle for us or anything.
So, that's one thing that I always get. We don't want to be a landlord and that sort of thing. And Roger Fegley out in Sulphur Springs used to always say, he's like, if they're calling me to fix an air conditioner, I just put that in the business retention and expansion checkbox. I got to talk to a business owner today, right? Like it might be a thing, but at least now I got to talk to that business. And so I always thought that was a really good attitude and mindset around it, right?
One of those questions that you've also asked is that, how did we go down this pathway? And I think Roger did a great job there at Sulphur Springs, but in my state, I'd go and I'd talk to Wes Stuckey at Ardmore because he was doing the buildings, maybe not to the level that I'm at
Right.
now. And we've only built buildings they're small enough that we can control.
Right.
Don't build something that's too big and outside of your league. It used to be where we were trying to attract 500 jobs, and now I'm just looking for those 50-man wins. I mean, it's what happens when you get a little.
That's our target audience. So
Yeah.
They told us they can sneak 50 in without getting killed by their other industries, right? That's
right.
Told us. Well, I just appreciate your sharing your knowledge, and I do think it's important, especially here. We have this dedicated sales tax, but it feels like each day or each year that kind of slips a little bit. People kind of forget why we did it and what its true investment purposes are. And I think more and more cities could benefit from this sort of education of how do they reinvest to create a sustainable economic development organization and not necessarily depend on sales tax, because literally overnight it could be gone if we're not careful. So I appreciate you sharing that.
It's really, look, I think as economic developers, we're always being a bit attacked. And those attacks are coming, it used to be when everybody understood that you had to go out and you had to go and recruit business and industry. And now you got so many even our politicians are saying, hey, no, those things, they'd happen regardless. And it really doesn't. I mean, only those of us who are in those trenches, we know how long it really takes to get a win. And if you're in a rural setting, it's even longer. My deal is, how do you preserve? I have to work on workforce. That's the reason we're so entrenched to our high school students. We're in our 9th year of our internship program, where those kids are going into those. If they want to be a dentist, we send them to a dentist. They want to be a doctor, a nurse, school teacher. I mean, they get paired with that occupation. It is really the coolest thing. What it also does for me is it lets those students know that there are job opportunities right here at home. Okay. When and I don't care what community we're in, our kids eventually, they will go back to a comfort zone if they know there are jobs.
Yeah.
Why did we do this? It's because I had a teacher one time that told the students, if you want to get a job, you're going to have to go to Oklahoma City or Dallas or something like that. And we said, no. So we started doing teacher tours. We do junior tours through our business industry. It's very, very structured. Anybody wants to know any of this, they can give me a call. I'll share anything with you. Our kids get to see our bank, one of our banks that does all the core services. We have, they get to go inside the hospital. We have a hospital that has about 1,200 employees. Sometimes we'll go to Halliburton. Sometimes we go to a different manufacturer, and then we'll go to a construction trades where they're building houses. And so those kids get to see those different opportunities as juniors, as 8th graders. And this year we're being tasked with doing the same thing with our 5th graders.
Oh,
So
wow. That's amazing.
they can start to see what they want to become. And we're not pushing degrees, we're pushing, opportunities. I mean,
That's incredible, Lyle. That's a
or
really
skill
good,
sets.
I think that's a really good lesson for folks.
Good.
Wait, Lyle, you've been doing this, man, for 20 years. Why do you do this? Tell me a little bit about why you do economic development. I mean, as you mentioned, it is not easy and it's not fun sometimes. So what keeps you motivated, and why do you keep doing this year after year?
Seeing businesses succeed, seeing something. I mean, no one pats you on the back in this line of work. You have to get that self-satisfaction from the inside. And knowing that I've helped a business or 2 or 10, I mean, that right there is the gratification that keeps me going each and every day. Sometimes you'll fight through some challenging times. I'm seeing those. But at the same time, I mean, I'm just looking for success for others, and you have to be wired a certain way to do what we do. And that's really the deal.
All right. Well, that's great. Lyle, thank you so much. Thanks for being here on Success from Day One. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Thanks for being a good friend, and thank you for doing what you do. Economic development is not easy. It's not hard. I know we compete a little bit with Oklahoma, but it's all in good fun. Everybody, has an opportunity to win. And we thank you for, just trying to help the entrepreneur, small business owner succeed. And I think that's a great why. So thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. I love to sit and talk and have this conversation and help others do what y'all do better. And I hope that we've done that today. Lyle, thank you very much, man. We'll see you later, all right?
All right. Thank you. We'll see you.
Bye, guys.
'Cause you gave us a shot, so we'll give you all we got. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.